As of today, we are lowering the age limit for eligibility. It was 70, now it's 68. Anybody 68 or older can call right now. It's a decent chance you get an appointment tomorrow, but you'll get an appointment relatively soon. And come on in and get the vaccine. Also, good neighbors who drive 68-year-olds, you got to be 65 and up. That window is getting smaller and smaller. You can call as well. So we've got enough capacity to go from 70 to 68. I'd like to go all the way down to 65. And as soon as we find out this weekend how many vaccines are coming next week, I'm hopeful that by next week we'll be able to bring it all the way to age 65. But I am not going to tell you to call in and make an appointment if I think we're just going to have to cancel you. A number of counties had to cancel this past week. We didn't have to, although it was close, but we're trying to manage this. So, you know anybody in your life who's 68 or 69, let them know right now. Call up and book their appointment. Next, we are opening this up to the clergy. Active members of the clergy who live or work in Detroit, and your ministry brings them into face-to-face contact with your congregation or your staff. Services now are not being held in person. They're being done by Zoom. But our clergy are visiting people's homes, visiting them in hospitals, have a lot of face-to-face activities. If you are a member of the clergy, you can call today and get an appointment. When you show up, you're going to have to show your ministry ID. That could be your minister's license. It could be a business card. It could be a pay stub. You're just going to have to demonstrate that you are actually working in a clergy function. And you can call today as well. And the other group we're expanding to is funeral home and mortuary services employees. The folks working in these funeral homes are face-to-face with a lot of grieving friends and relatives. So what we are trying to do is continue to protect the most vulnerable, going now down to age 68, going to clergy and funeral home workers who are face-to-face. Those folks are now able to call 313-230-0505. I think we're up to 100 operators right now. You won't be on the phone more than 10 or 15 minutes, and you will be booked. This is the only place in America that anybody 68 or up can get on the phone, get through to somebody in 15 minutes, and have an appointment booked. And so, because you are in the city, we have this kind of service. Please take advantage of it. So, all the categories eligible today, to recap, 68 or older, the good neighbors who drive 68-year-olds, K-12 school teachers, and I will keep saying this to the teachers, call. You want to get these second shots in as early as possible, so if schools open March 1st, you are protected, as well as the child care workers, the daycare centers. Our postal employees are calling, they're not having trouble understanding this. City employees, federal and state law enforcement officials, and now clergy and funeral home mortuary workers. Anybody in the city of Detroit or those who work in the city of Detroit who fall into these categories, we can get you in, and it is a remarkable experience. It is almost hard to explain the difference between the climate at the testing site this summer at the State Fairgrounds and the vaccination site at TCF. In the fairgrounds, there was a lot of tension. People were scared. They were waiting for their test results. They didn't know if they had COVID. If you could see what's happening now in TCF, people are getting their shot. They're clapping. They're honking their horns in celebration of the fact that they've got their shot. It is a very positive experience. It's going very smoothly, and it will bring peace of mind. It will protect not just you, but it will protect those around you. I'm hopeful I will be back next week and be able to expand this further. The Biden administration has now been there 24 hours. They still haven't sorted out the numbers yet, but I'm hopeful that they will have them sorted out shortly. Also, if you want to know how we're doing, we have a dashboard online at detroitmi.gov. And so there's all kinds of confusing stuff out there. Here is what the Detroit Health Department has done. So I can't control the numbers of who they sent what to what CVS or who sent what to what hospital, but the ones that are coming into Denise Fair and the health department. We have received, as of today, 10,850 doses. We've administered 8,959, and you can see the category there. How many went to medical first responders, how many went to seniors and their good neighbors, how many went to teachers. We are updating this every single day, so if there's any question, you can see exactly where the city of Detroit vaccination process is, and I do expect at any given time, more than 80% of the doses that we receive will be in our residents' arms. We are not sitting on them. We're moving them through quickly, and we're continuing to expand TCF as fast as these doses come in. We have other news today. Next week, starting next week, depending on the Postal Service's schedule, you're going to get a notice in the mail on next year's property tax assessment. It's going to look like this. It'll tell you how it changed. When you get this, it is not a tax bill. Your tax bill will come in the summer. This is the assessment for the next year, and it tells you what you're assessed at so you can decide whether you can appeal. We have very good news in this city. Property values in the city went up 8% last year. Sales prices of homes went up 8%. So the average assessment is going to go up 8%, but your taxes are going to go up 2%, because the Michigan Constitution says no matter how fast your property values go up, if you still own the house, your increase only goes up to the rate of inflation. So last year's rate of inflation in this area was 2%. So your property taxes will go up on average 2%. Your home prices, your assessed value, will go up 8%. And you're going to get a chance to get that in Alvin Horn, our assessor. We'll talk to you about the details. This is our 4th year in a row we're seeing home values go up. This is a very good thing. Here probably is the thing that I'm proudest of. This map shows you where property values went up or down. It isn't, they went up in downtown and midtown and went down every place else. So the red areas and the yellow areas, they went down. The light green areas, they went up. And in the dark green areas, they actually went up more than 15%. So if you had the good fortune to be in East English Village, people in East English Village don't need me to tell them this, property values went up dramatically. So we had a number of neighborhoods where the property values went up 10 or 15%. I will say this again. Even if you're in a neighborhood where it went up 15%, your taxes only went up 2%, because your taxes are capped with inflation. But this is what a healthy, growing city should look like. It should show property values going up from one end of the city to the other. 189 of 194 neighborhoods saw their home sale prices go up. We are heading the right direction. So what you are going to get in the mail is this notice, and when it comes, take a look at it. This particular one says that the amount went up $300. You'll get a chance to look at it, and if you think that it's not fair, that maybe your house had some damage and it didn't go up like the others, there's an opportunity for you to appeal. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alvin Horn, who's our outstanding assessor. When he took over, the city of Detroit was, for all practical purposes, in state receivership because of the terrible way assessments had been done in this city 6-7 years ago. He has straightened it out. He has reassessed every single property in this city individually. He's gotten us out of state oversight because of his professionalism. And I will let Director Horn take you through what you can expect, and if you think your assessment is too high, how you appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a graph of the 194 neighborhoods in the city of Detroit. It shows the percentage increase through each of them. We had 7 neighborhoods that increased in value by more than 15%. We had 53 neighborhoods that increased in value between 10 and 15%. The bulk of the neighborhoods in the city, 111 out of 194, they saw an increase between 5 to 10%. There were 18 neighborhoods that increased by 1 to 5%, and there were a handful of neighborhoods, 5 out of 194, which saw a decrease in value. That decrease was between 2.5 to 6.9%. Just to kind of talk about something the mayor just brought up, the map he just showed, which was mostly green, those of you who've been following this process since the mayor took office will probably remember that map was completely red. There were value decreases across the board. So it has been a struggle to get the assessments right-sided. With the support of administration, the two CFOs who've been in office since the mayor took place, it has been a priority of this administration to make sure that the assessments in this city reflected the actual market value. It's been a struggle, and it was a cost to get there. 4 years and $8.5 million that the city really didn't have to spend to correct the assessment roll, but they made the decision to do it. So we've corrected it, and we continue to spend the money that's necessary to maintain this assessment roll. It took a 20% decrease across the board to right-size the assessments. We started seeing the trend in 16 where they started increasing. That was based on market data. But because the trend was kind of iffy, the city was still in transition, it was decided to continue to reduce values in both 15 and 16. In 17, it was clear. The market had recovered. We had brought the assessments down to a point where market value was driving everything forward. So as the mayor pointed out, this is the 4th year of increases in assessments. But I think even more telling, it's the 4th year where we see neighborhoods after neighborhoods increase in value. It's not just the neighborhoods that you would expect to increase. It's not just Detroit Golf Club. It's not just Palmer Woods. It's not just East English Village. The recovery has expanded. It's grown stronger, and every indication is that we will see a 5th year of increased assessments across the city. The assessor's review has been expanded. The city made a concerted effort to provide anyone who needed assistance with their property tax. They wanted to make sure that everyone got that help. So we, as most of you probably know, we had an event at TCF Arena back in December. More than 1,200 people attended. But in addition to those 1,200 people, the publicity behind it allowed a lot of people who didn't know that type of assistance was available. They reached out to the assessor's office. They reached out to other city agencies, and they said, we need help, we need help. So a decision was made to keep going as long as we legally could to accept the HTAP applications and to process those HTAP applications. And even those people who we could not process the application for, we have an agreement with the county treasurer. We're going to process those applications for 21, and the county will not take any action as far as foreclosure action until we can get those HTAP applications processed and get those people into the PACE program. So the assessor review has been expanded this year, and this is a permanent expansion. Going forward, the assessor's review will be 3 weeks, from February 1st through February 22nd. The assessor's review is an informal process where a property owner can ask how the city has valued their property and ask that we take a second look, in some cases a third look, to make sure that we got it right. It is as simple as sending an email, picking up the phone, or sending a text message. I think you got it wrong, and I'd like you to take a second look. We will send an appraiser to the house. We will review the sales that we use to compute that property. We will take a second and third look at that neighborhood to make sure the conditions warrant an increase. And we'll talk to the taxpayer, and we'll explain to them exactly how we came to that value. If they agree with us, that's fine, it ends the process. If we decide to make an adjustment, and they're satisfied with that adjustment, that ends the process. If we make an adjustment and they believe that the value should be reduced even further, then we'll explain to them what their rights are. Their rights are to go to the city's March Board Review, which is a more formal process to reduce taxes. The March Board Review is made of 9 members who are appointed by Detroit City Council, and they hear valuation appeals for the city of Detroit. We will provide all of the information that we have to the taxpayer to show how we compute the value. So they'll have our ECF analysis, they'll have our neighborhood analysis, they'll have every sale that we use to compute those values. And I believe that was the end of my part of it, sir.
Well, thank you, Alvin. And so in the informal assessors review, folks have been instructed to be fair in that process, to not make you go through the formal appeal process if a mistake was made, and I think you will find treated fairly. But in this case, this year, I think people are going to find that this was done fairly, but if it's not, we'll fix it. One more thing that I'd like to talk about, which I have mixed feelings about, and I'm not sure if it's been picked up in the Detroit papers yet, but last month, Governor Whitmer stole our chief financial officer to be the state's budget director, and this week, President Biden stole our group executive for planning, housing, and development. So Arthur Jemison has been named HUD's principal deputy assistant secretary. That's a long title to say. He's basically the number 3 person in America at HUD. They have a cabinet secretary, a deputy secretary, and then 4 people at that 3rd level as the principals. Arthur Jemison will be the person in America responsible for community development block grant, homeless funding, and a number of housing initiatives. And it's an extraordinary honor for the city of Detroit that the country's leader in rebuilding communities has been hired out of our administration. Been a long time since anybody from Detroit got that kind of high-level cabinet position. And so while it will be a great loss to us, it reflects what Arthur Jemison did here, the 4,000 affordable housing units that we preserved that would have caused people to be kicked out. We stepped in and intervened and got them secure for another 25, 30 years. The 3,500 new units that were done, the great outreach on the homelessness side and the development of permanent supportive housing, and what we have done on the Strategic Neighborhood Fund with these neighborhood developments. Arthur became recognized as a national leader, as did the city of Detroit, in community development. So he is now in charge of the federal government's programs in this area. But fortunately, we have somebody ready to step into his place. So his deputy was the head of our Housing Revitalization Department, Donald Rencher. Donald will tell you he was the one who was actually putting these deals together to build all this affordable housing and protect these homeless programs. And so as of today, our new group executive for planning, housing, and development, the newest member of our cabinet, is Donald Rencher. And I want to introduce him now. Donald?
Thank you so much, Mayor. I can't tell you, I really appreciate the opportunity that you've been giving, that you've given to me. I also am extremely humbled about the responsibility. I can tell you that I truly believe in the city of Detroit and the future of Detroit and its residents. I will continue to build upon the work that we have already established, working with SNF neighborhoods and making sure we're investing and doing it in an equitable way. It's key to what and at the heart of what I am as a person and what I believe. And I can't wait to get to work. We have a strong team, and we'll continue to provide housing for people across all income levels. And we'll continue to work hard every day. And that's what you'll see from me. And we will be looking at how we do that during planning and also providing the housing that comes with it. So I'm truly excited about the opportunity again, and I can't wait to get to work. I'm actually still working, so it's not like I can't wait to get to work, but I'm in the middle of it right now. But truly humbled by it. But thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Donald's first order of business is we are going to open up a national search for a planning director. Some of you may remember Maurice Cox, who did a phenomenal job for us, is now the planning director for the city of Chicago, and Arthur had stepped into that role. But we are going to do a national search, and again, I think everybody nationally, Arthur Jemison came from Boston. Maurice Cox came from New Orleans. but folks are learning that when you come into this administration, you are going to get national attention and recognition for what you're accomplishing, and we're going to try to get a world-class planning director in here. One last note, I want to say congratulations to John Naglick, Tanya Stoudemeyer, and the Katie Hammer and the entire finance team. Yesterday, Standard & Poor's just upgraded our credit rating outlook from negative to stable on the $250 million in bonds for Proposal N. So there were people who said, why are you selling these bonds? The city of Detroit isn't in position to do it. Not only are we going to be able to sell them in the next couple of weeks, but Wall Street is saying Detroit's credit rating is even better than it was a year ago because of the way we are managing our finances. And that's a great compliment to the work that they have done. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Mr. Mayor, let's start with the property tax assessments, and I'm curious, what is the average home value this round?
The average residential property value, sir?
Yes.
It is a little over $14,000 across the city.
14,000, okay. I was in touch with Chris Berry from the Harris Public Policy Group.
I'm
that
familiar
had,
with
that
it.
had done the work on the assessments. And it is his opinion, and he still believes it to be the case, that the city has overcharged residents under 28,000 and undercharged those over 28,000. And that he believes that there ought to be a freeze for the properties below the $28,000 threshold. And I'm just curious if you agree with that assessment, and is he right, is he wrong? What is your reaction to that?
If he would share the data that's the basis for that conclusion, we'll react to it. But so far, they haven't shared the data, have they?
No, sir. Sir, I'm familiar with Professor Berry and his colleagues, and I have a fundamental disagreement with that statement. We have reviewed every single sale in the city, over 65,000 over a 24-month period. We look at every neighborhood, 194 residential neighborhoods in the city. We have a staff of appraisers who drive this city. We've bought aerial imagery. We've bought street-level imagery. We're tied into the building department, so we look at permits. We look at everything we can possibly look at to come up with value for this property. But more than that, we have staff who live here. They understand what Detroit is. They understand the differences in these neighborhoods. It's valuation, and a very smart person once told me this, is an art, not a science. You have the facts, but you also have to understand the market. Detroit is a unique market, and you can't get those nuances simply from a sales study. You have to live here, and you have to understand what's going on here to understand valuation.
I'll come back to if they will share the underlying data, we'll give you an answer. And Rod, if you can get the data
Sure,
for us.
okay, I didn't realize
Alvin,
that.
we'll
yeah.
look at it.
They have a 13-page study, but I don't know if
But
that's.
the
if
data
you
that
want the data that was
underlies
behind it?
Anybody can give you a study with a conclusion. So they have gone through and valued each individual house. If we get the data, we can give you an answer. It's very hard to respond to something that doesn't have the
I
underlying
get you.
data.
Okay. In terms of the expansion of the vaccines, it strikes me, it's, covering the auto business all these years, what is the take rate? In other words, how are we doing, or how do we know the number of people eligible versus the people who have gotten it so far?
Well, we know demographically how many people are in each age group. I guess we know how many school teachers there are. I can't tell you who got it from all places. Some have gone to Henry Ford to get it. Some have gone to CVS to get it.
Yeah.
What I'm focused on is the federal government and state government give us an allocation of vaccines. Everything that's allocated to us, we're getting into folks' arms, and we are vaccinating as fast as they come in. At some point, I'm hoping the Biden administration gives you the global picture so I could see how many did CVS vaccinate in Detroit last week, how many did Henry Ford vaccinate in Detroit last week. I just don't know the answer. Right now, we're just running the TCF Center and our own outreach.
Right, and I'm just asking because I'm trying to get a feel for where the city is and the reasoning for dropping the age. In other words, do you feel like you have enough vaccines coming in to cover the age groups that are there?
Right, so we know, we have a chart, at this point, we're booking 1,300 vaccinations tomorrow. So we're at 1,300 a day, And so all we're doing is looking at how many slots do we have to book, and as the number of calls from the 70-year-olds starts to dwindle, we go to 68. When the calls from the 68-year-olds start to dwindle, we'll go to 65, but we're going in order of greatest risk. And the reality is, people over 75 were dying of COVID at a higher rate than those younger. People over 70 were the next highest, and so we're just going in order of risk as fast as vaccines show up.
Okay. One last question as it pertains to, and I know that you were asked about this yesterday, but the release of Kwame Kilpatrick, you want to elaborate at all on that, sir?
No, I don't know that I can say anything different than I said yesterday. I've known Kwame Kilpatrick since he was a Cass Tech. His father and I worked together in offices next to each other. There were times when Kwame's sons played on the floor of my office in the county building. When I look at Kwame Kilpatrick, I see a father of those children, and I'm happy for him.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'll pick up there if I may. I did not have access yesterday, and forgive me, but one of the questions I did want to ask was in that context, given the damage done to this city, the bankruptcy that you oversaw, getting Detroit out of, being a former prosecutor, I think there are many that don't know how you square your feelings or would like you to elaborate on your thoughts when a person has done so much damage to the city of Detroit, yet being happy in this fashion as far as his release.
So other people may have different opinions. What you got was my honest reaction. And, my feeling about Kwame Kilpatrick is him playing in the office with those 3-year-old boys on the floor, knowing what kind of father he is, knowing how painful it has been to him, and knowing the amount of talent that he has. I think that the world will be better off with his talent on the outside doing good, and I do expect him to do good. He's still a young man, and I do expect him to do good, and that's my feeling. I understand other people disagree. I'm just telling you how I feel.
May I ask, have you talked to him or had a chance to talk to him since his release?
He hasn't called in the last 24 hours, but he probably has other priorities.
Understand. A couple questions on the topics quickly of what we've talked about today. When we talk about home valuation and what those in business may call the positive curve, where does this lead you once we get out of the COVID budgets, of course, and the impact of those? But if we're talking 4 years in a row and being on the uptick, what this means to the city as far as financial gain, et cetera?
Yeah, we have, before COVID hit, we were running way ahead of every projection on income tax revenue, on property tax revenues, on casino revenues, on corporate revenues. This city has been coming back financially in a dramatic way. We have run surpluses every single year that I have been the mayor. It's the reason why Standard & Poor's, I think, shocked a lot of people in the middle of COVID in upgrading the city of Detroit's rating outlook. And so we're continuing to manage well. When we get folks to take this vaccine and reopen this city, and I do think we'll be reopened this summer, I think the future is very bright. Drive around the city. There's more construction going on in Detroit today than at any time in the last 50 years. People believe in this city, and I'm going to be very happy when we get reopened again.
My last is, just to be clear in regard to the vaccinations, are there any issues with what's being set aside, for lack of a better way to ask it, for people's second vaccinations and the supply in that regard?
My understanding is that the state is setting aside the second shots. So they know when the first shots were issued. Every time they send us 4,000 Pfizer vaccines, they know 4,000 more need to come 3 weeks later. But you'd have to ask the governor that question about exactly how they're set aside. I'm been told that they are.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mayor, we've got a number of questions actually for Mr. Horn from Nusrat Rahman from the Free Press. She wants to know if the assessor's office expects there will be any U.S. Post Office delays with the assessment notifications, and if so, how that might affect the appeals period.
We have no way of knowing. I have no way of answering a question like that. But I will say this: we are committed to providing whatever we're committed to providing the service that the citizens need. If there is a rush, if there's a higher than expected number of appeals, then we'll deal with it accordingly at the time.
Didn't we extend the period last year?
We have extended that period every time we've needed to extend, sir.
And so if it turns out the post office is slow delivering these, we'll extend the appeal period.
Okay. I think that speaks to one of our other questions too about, she'd been hearing that some folks feel that the 3-week period even isn't enough for this initial review.
Well, I've heard that, I'm aware of that theory, and I would point out that Detroit gives property owners twice as much time as any other community to appeal their property taxes. Keep this in mind, if Detroit eliminated the assessor's review, then people would, their only option would be the March Board review. A very formal process. It has a start date, it has an end date, which is set by state law. Last year, we had 4,800 plus appeals at the assessor's review. We were able to settle more than half of them. So if you had eliminated the assessor's review, all 4,800 property owners would have had to have gone to the March Board review, a far more formal process where rules of evidence will have applied. But also keep in mind, the March Board review does more than hear property appeals. That's where Detroit and every other city in the state sets their assessment roll for the year. They hear classification challenges. They hear revisions to the assessment roll, engineering changes, splits, combinations. Detroit has over 400,000 parcels, so those things count in the hundreds and in some cases to thousands. All of those things have to be done at the March Board review. So the only thing you would do if you eliminate the assessor's review is simply put more work in the same time period that has to be done. Something would have to give. Like I said, this is not a small city. There are a lot of nuisances that goes from the valuation. There's a lot of activity that goes on that has to be conducted by the assessor's office and has to be conducted at the assessor's review. Every action has a reaction. You eliminate the assessor's review, then you're going to cause another problem somewhere else.
If you were in any other city, you couldn't go in until March because of what the city of Detroit operates in February. You've got an extra 3 weeks that you wouldn't have in other places, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. 2 other process questions for appeals. One is you had mentioned a phone number that people could call. Do you have that number?
Yes, sir. 313-224-3040.
224-3040?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And also, what type of documentation or materials might someone need if they want to make an appeal?
We always advise people to bring pictures. A lot of it depends on why you're appealing. Most people appeal because of the condition of their house. The foundation is cracked. Something is wrong that can't be seen from externally. So in that case, bring pictures. That is the first and most common thing. If you're appealing because of the condition of the neighborhood, take pictures of the neighboring houses. If you're saying that there's houses that are falling apart, then take pictures of them. If there's a crack house across the street, take a picture of it. We'll contact the police, but we'll also consider that for you. So anything that you believe will support your claim to reduce the value, take a picture of it and bring it to us, and we will take a hard look at it.
Okay. Last question for Mr. Horn, and then we'll have a couple for the mayor. Christine Ferretti from the Detroit News wanted to know if you could address the areas on the map that were in red and orange and what might have led to the reduction in values there.
We could bring the map back up. Okay. The single biggest area, quite simply, there's a lot of demolition going on there. A lot of the buildings have come off the roll. When we remove a house off the roll, there's just land. That will be a significant reduction. Even a house that's barely fallen apart has value to it. So we have to, because of the valuation principles in Michigan, we have to keep that improvement on the roll. When it comes down, then we simply value the land. So there'll be a significant loss in value in that particular neighborhood in those conditions.
But your individual house may well not have dropped in property value, but the area as a whole did as we cleared out the structures.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, a couple questions for the mayor. This has to do with the older overassessments that had occurred. The reporter says that Deputy Mayor Conrad Mallett had said that to address the overassessment issues of the past, that the state and federal governments would have to provide funding for that. Is that something that the city is pursuing?
Yeah, and this is an issue we've talked about a number of times. I ran in 2013 on the issue of overassessments. The Detroit Auditor General in 2012 wrote a report about how terrible the assessor's office had performed on those overassessments. And most of that money went to the Detroit Public Schools in 2011, 2012, 2013. And as we've said before, there's no legal way to go back to the schools, to go back to Wayne County, say, give me the money that you paid to the school teachers in 2012, give me the money you paid to the deputies of the jail in 2013. That's the reason why each tax year is handled. So a number of council members have been working on a plan that is a reasonable plan to give preference for folks who owned houses during that time. And I'm hopeful that council will come up with a good solution sometime soon, and I'll be supportive of that.
Okay. And final question, as it relates to housing and development issues, what sort of assistance do you think that we'd be seeking from the Biden administration, or how they could be helpful?
So, I, I was like, oh, well, thank you for that question. I have a list of a request in working with some other cities from around the country about different ideas of how to bring in additional federal funding, CDBG, for instance, and also relaxing some of those rules that we have. We have the ability to use that funding to increase the capacity to provide more gap funding to do development projects. But there's FHA lending. We need to ensure that we're providing our Detroit residents with access to lending, whether you're a landlord or you own your home. But those are some of the big issues that we're looking at. In low-income housing tax credits, some rule changes with that. But we have a plethora of ideas that we're looking to try to stimulate growth and produce development at a high occupancy. So
We have an entire team that's putting our request together, both the Biden administration and our senators and congressional delegation. And I think there is obviously far more opportunity. I talked about this before. The federal government passed $2 billion in community block grant funds 2 years ago as part of the CARES package, and we expected our share to be $50 million if you had just done it traditionally. The Trump administration changed the formulas and took out the weighting of the age of houses so that the older cities no longer got the money. We went from 50 million to 5 million, and Arizona did really well. And so we have watched the federal government be manipulated against cities for the last 4 years. Now we have a partner in President Biden who I think is going to be treating the cities fairly. And now we have Arthur Jemison who will be able to give us some guidance. So I think we're going to put together a good plan and make a reasonable pitch.
All right, that's the last question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.